come in contact with a lot of people who love to draw or are animators for themselves, and you're really at the very, very top, lucky you, but you're also great at what you do. What do you do when you get, because you're really on deadline, there's a lot of pressure with what you do. It's a very unusual collection of personality traits to be an animator, because there's some mathematical mindedness that's required, and there's a vision of the finished product that's required, but it's also artistry. And then you've got to have the sense of humor, because you've got to be, and watching people, and the way, especially for you, because you do so many.
Animation's tough.
It's tough. It's tough. It is. It's amazing but it's very unusual as an artist to have all those traits. So what happens when you get you're trapped and you can't figure out a solution? How do you, as an artist, not so much as an animator, but as someone who's creating art, what do you do to get rid of your self-critic or whatever it is that happens when you get to a place where you're a little bit trapped in a moment of problem solving?
Problem solving, yeah. Well, that's a good question. Well, and I can really only speak for myself.
But you are at the top of your craft, right. So it's important for people to know.
Well, what I've tried to develop over the years, and I'm probably my worst critic of my own work. I'm very hard on
That's
myself.
Really interesting too.
And a lot of us are.
Yeah. Artists almost always are.
But there's a couple of things. One, I tend to be disciplined. I think there's a discipline you have to develop, because I'm not doing this for my own pleasure, in a sense. I mean,
well, you are first and
I
foremost,
am, but
after that you've got a job to do.
I have a job to do. So there's an element of discipline involved, and I like to think that over the years I've worked out a fairly good working routine for myself. I take a lot of inspiration from outside of animation. I like to look at the golden age of American illustration as examples. And I just did a lecture here where I talked about that there's a lot of parallels there. And I like reading about N.C. Wyeth and Howard Kyle and Rockwell and Leyendecker and all the greats of that golden age, because their struggles are similar. There's a parallel path that we.
Well, it's pop culture expressed inside fine art.
Yeah.
So that's what it is.
And so I look to them quite often for inspiration. But in terms of working through a problem, I've always felt, I can only focus on one scene at a time. And I've always just told myself I can't. Sometimes you get in a fight with a scene, and it wants to fight you back, and I want to fight it, and and I won't let it beat me. So but there's just a doggedness of I'm going to keep at it. So part of that is is the discipline. Sometimes it means stepping away and
barbecue.
Yeah, go home and
play with your dog.
Play with the dog and kiss my wife and all that kind of stuff, and just give it a chance. But
well, support is huge.
Support is huge.
Having people believe in what you do, who you love, and who matter to you.
Exactly.
That's huge.
But for me, it's a lot of it's just that inner working through the problem. And I had instructors at Cal Arts who were artists here at the studio, again from that first generation that were telling us and teaching us those kind of things. And Ken O'Connor, who was a layout artist, always stressed the point about thinking around a problem. And a lot of that was thumbnailing it and exploring ideas, and again, it's just part of the kind of the fighting through a problem if you have it. You may start here, but you start, well, what about this, and what about this, and you kind of you think around, and you may come right back to where you were, or you may stop up here and find a new idea.
Plus, the self-critic is like a box. You know what I mean? And so that whole cliche of thinking outside the box, it is like, okay, I'm now trapped in this place here, and 2 million people would be looking at it all these other ways.
Right.
So yeah, but that is discipline. That's what that is.
And the other idea that again, comes out of what I see in illustration and what you have in animation, are the parameters. Because oftentimes people will say, and maybe they've said something to you in your gallery, but they'll say, you know, don't you find it boring? Doesn't it boring to just draw the same thing over and over and over again? Because all they do is see, you know, the image of the animator making a drawing that looks essentially the same as the one drawing you just did. And they think, oh, how boring is that? But it really isn't. And you're not doing the same thing. And then the parameters, you know, as an illustration, there's a certain text that maybe they have to find an image to tell. And for us, it's the same thing. Each scene has a specific point, a story point that has to be communicated.
Visually.
So those
In that moment.
those parameters help focus, again, the discipline, and that comes in, and you're focused on, okay, what needs to be done here, and how can I tell it, and is, you know, that's right for the personality and is entertaining as much as possible. So those are just, and again, for me, it's just the discipline of just kind of going through that checklist of working through it, and you know, maybe going down to the soda machine and getting a soda, take a walk, and clear my head a little bit. But I try not to let a scene, you know, beat me. But if it's, you know, riding home on the train or driving home, and I'm constantly thinking about it, thinking ahead to what's coming up, you know, so I'm already problem solving ahead of time. But, you know, in addition to what I'm, you know, dealing with, you know, right now on my, you know, desk in front of me. So.
Do you listen to music while you're working?
I have music. I have classical music going in the background, just to kind of.
Nothing with words because it's distracting?
Yeah, not so much.
Curious.
It's just, you know, wallpaper.
Mm-hmm.
It's just wallpaper. Because I've worked not only in the, you know, confines of a private office. I've also, in Florida, I was out on the floor, bullpen kind of a thing, and it's just whatever, you know, you can, you know, minimize your distractions to, and ideally an office is the best, you know, environment.
And you go to the premieres and watch your own work in the finished product.
Mm-hmm.
And are you still really critical, or you let it go and you're joyful about it?
I'm critical in some respects, but I at that point I like to see how the audience reacts, and then I'm just making notes, and you know, certainly you go through and you go, I wish I'd like to have done that a little better, but that's again part of the discipline. You can't. You got to move on. Film's done, new film coming, so you always hopefully look to improve and do a better job the next time around.
Is the newest movie always your favorite movie?
Probably.
Or even like the one you're sort of working on at the same time? It's always like, usually it's the next thing.
Well, it's currently, you know, it's my, you know, probably my favorite thing at this point. But, you know, a lot of people ask, well, who's your favorite character?
I don't ask that. That's
good.
Like picking a child.
Right. Well, I'd borrow Frank Thomas's answer on that, which was, you know, picking your favorite child. I mean,
yeah.
Each movie has its unique memories and experience, and you know, the good times and bad, and so I like them all for various reasons.
Thank you so much for taking time with me, and we're all going to be very excited about this new movie, Princess and the Frog, and thank you for all the characters that you've brought to life for us.
It's my pleasure.
I can't even tell you how many people love your work, so thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay.